Excuse me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Busy weekend for everybody. I've been preparing for this podcast for a while for you guys, so I hope you enjoy it. We're breaking down the American League East today. That includes the Baltimore Orioles, Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, Tampa Bay Rays, and Toronto Blue Jays. What can we expect from these teams? How are some of these teams going to exceed expectations? And what can we expect from the basement dwellers? Also, I'm going to tell you why the Mookie Betts trade kind of shook this entire snow globe up a little bit. And we're going to talk about how the Yankees are destined to fail. Too big to fail is what the New York Yankees motto should be. They have all of the cards stacked in their favor. And yet, as a Yankee fan, as somebody that's watched professional sports for the majority of his life, I can tell you that anytime a team is set up not to fail, something goes wrong. So let's talk about the over-unders, and I'll tell you a little bit more about some of these teams and what we can expect for this season. I did this in alphabetical order, so I didn't do this by wins and losses. So the Orioles are going to come first, and of course, the Yankees are going to be lower down the list. But let's talk about the over-unders. So the Orioles, to start the season, Vegas has them set at 56.5 wins. And does that feel like a proper number? Yes, because when you look at this Orioles roster, you can't name 5 players on it. They're about 5 years away from being in any sort of conversation, being competitive in this league. Why is that? Well, you get rid of Manny Machado, a homegrown player. You send him away because you know you're not going to re-sign him. He goes to the Padres, so you lose pretty much the main guy who's going to sell you tickets. And I stress this over and over and over again. I'm going to sound like a broken record by the end of this entire podcast series, breaking down these major league teams. But to win games is one thing, but to get fans in the stadium is a complete other problem. And I think that the Orioles are going to have both of those issues. Their starting rotation, I'm not really in love with. They got a bunch of young arms in the farm system, but those guys, like I mentioned, a couple years away from being a couple years away, and you don't have anybody that can sell you jerseys. Now, I know this isn't the same league as the NBA, where marketable stars sell jerseys. You get them to the stadium. I don't know. It's not like the NFL, where it's more of a very big team game, where the quarterback will sell jerseys. Maybe your defensive tackle will sell jerseys, but for the most part, there's about 4 guys on every team that are recognizable, and the rest of them, you're going to have to get a roster sheet and a scorecard to really know them. Baseball, though, no masks except for the catcher. Everybody gets their face on TV at least once at every at-bat, especially in the National League where you get to see the pitchers at-bat too. But it feels like everybody should be able to be marketable. Everybody should be able to be recognizable. And that's what made baseball great at the beginning. But the Orioles have found a way to pervert that, and they don't have anybody that you know. But all of that said, I've gone out of my way to do advanced scouting. That's right. I went out of my way to tell you a player to watch. I did this for about every single team except one of them, and that's going to come down later in these podcast episodes. There's one team where it's not a player to watch, it's a manager to watch. But the player to watch for the Baltimore Orioles is John Means, who went 12-11 last year with a 3.6 ERA in his rookie season. Why is that important? He's a left-handed pitcher that has a good changeup and a good curveball that did the O's well last season. Now, how many Orioles games did I watch, you might be asking? Well, every time they play the Yankees, I try to catch at least a couple innings. But at the beginning of the year, the Yankees were coming out of the gate very sluggish. They lost, I think, 2 of the first 4 to the O's, and I was worried because of guys like John Means, who are very good. They're a solid Major League Baseball pitcher, and that's asking for a whole lot when you look at this roster for Baltimore, where there's a bunch of guys who maybe are on their way back to whatever spring ball league that they came from. The pitching staff was the biggest issue for the team last year and won't be much better this season. So, if you're a Baltimore Orioles fan and you're looking at the over-under at 56.5, I'm going to advise you to bet the under. I think this is a 54 to 50-ish win team, and I know 56 is pretty low. It's setting the bar pretty low. I think that is the lowest of the American League teams when you look at the over-unders. Yeah, the O's have the lowest over-under when you look at American League teams. So I think they're still going to hit the under. I would not be shocked if they were the team that's in the basement for the next couple of years. I read this online one time talking about, I think it was the Detroit Lions. They were doing previews, a mock draft for the Lions, and they said, if you're checking in on this team this year, check in 2 more years because they're not going to be good again this year. So let's look at the Boston Red Sox, who, when you read any of the printed baseball previews, if you've checked out a baseball preview in the last 2 months, you're going to see a big issue with them. A lot of them have the Boston Red Sox as a team that's going to be competing in the American League East because of a guy, little known name, Mookie Betts. Well, Betts got traded, and it hurt their odds to win the division by a lot, and their World Series odds just sunk to the basement. They had one of the worst World Series odds coming into the season because they got rid of their perennial all-star and a guy who we've went back and forth with this with Red Sox fans before. And in the past, I've kind of conceded to dudes that may have seen a little bit more baseball than me. I will admit that I haven't seen every inning of every game since 1977. All that said, I still think Betts had the potential to be one of the, if not the, best outfielder in Red Sox history. Yeah, I didn't stutter. I think that he is the type of dude that could be a generational talent. Now, is he better than Yastrzemski or Williams or any of those other guys? Not right now, no. But I think his ceiling was where those guys would be in the middle. I think that he could be in that same conversation. Shoot, he won an MVP. He won a World Series. You get rid of him. Now you go back into that weird area where you're good enough to compete for the divisional title, but you're really not good enough to compete for a World Series. So let's look at it. The Red Sox are coming off of a season of disappointment last year with Chris Sales getting hurt, David Price being moody as always, the rotation being kind of weird. They won 84 games after winning 108 in the title the year before. They get rid of Correa thanks to the Astros cheating scandal. Honestly, the only team that has come out of this more clean than the Dodgers has been the Yankees, who have their kind of rival, their American League rival in the Astros, getting beaned every other time any of those guys step up to the plate. And then, of course, their rival, the Boston Red Sox, they lose their manager. So the Yankees are coming out on top thanks to the Astros scandal. And I know I did the pre-deal before some of these other podcasts where I said we're not going to talk about the Astros unless it directly affects the division, unless it directly affects the team. And in this case, I think it does because Correa is out. They're in a tailspin, ladies and gentlemen. Pedroia has been medically retired since about 2017. He hasn't officially retired it yet, so you can't start the clock on the Hall of Fame deal because I think that he's for sure a first ballot Hall of Famer. But it really is a shame that we're not going to get to see Pedroia have the type of season, to have the type of going away, the farewell tour that Big Papi had. Because I know you're going to say the Boston bombings. Papi had the incredible speech before the game at Fenway where he said this is our effing city, and he has just been a staple in Massachusetts and the Boston community since they won the World Series in 2004. But I think Pedroia is as, if not more important to some of those World Series teams as Big Papi is. I think Pedroia is their all-time second baseman. I think that his number's going to get retired. He is that good of a player. So it's a real shame that he has to deal with that injury. I think it is Machado that slid into him too, which makes it even worse. So here's a player to watch for the Boston Red Sox. If you're a Red Sox fan, you already know who this guy is. If you're a guy living outside of Massachusetts, outside of the realm of New England, let me tell you about Rafael Devers, who at 23 is the third baseman of the future for the Boston Red Sox. The dude can hit for power. He can hit for average. He's now on the everyday roster. He's a dude that's going to be playing a lot of games in a Red Sox jersey unless he becomes too expensive and the new ownership group wants to get rid of him. He is the guy that is going to have to pick up a lot of the numbers that Mookie left off. If Mookie Betts leaves this roster, you're looking at a guy in Devers who is going to try to make up some of those power numbers. He's not going to be able to make up the singles and the stolen bases that Mookie had, but he's going to be able to make up some of the power numbers. If you put him in the right position, get the right players around him, he might be a good engine for a team that's going to be struggling to look for runs, I think, early in the season. Their bullpen I'm still not in love with. Still don't love Chris Sales. Don't love the guy they got from the Twins, who is like 23 and already had like an elbow surgery, I want to hear. I think that this is going to be a very rough season. If you are a Red Sox fan, you look at the over-under for the Boston Red Sox, it's 85.5 games. Now, what does that tell you about where we think the Red Sox are going to be? Vegas thinks they're going to be over 500. I think they're going to be 500 exactly. I think they're going to be an 81-win team. Give me the under again on the Boston Red Sox. Let's move on to the New York Yankees, a team that had two of the biggest moves of the offseason directly affect them in their favor. Garrett Cole leaves the Houston Astros, the ace, the dude that has taken... He's a guy that probably should have won a World Series last year if it wasn't for some of the moves that that front office was making in Houston. I think that they put a lot of pressure on those players, putting some of those players in a very bad situation. Then, of course, it comes out that they cheated earlier, too. I think that a lot of press was down their throats about that. You could feel the writing was on the wall. Garrett Cole, one of the, if not the best American League pitcher. I'd put him in the same conversation as Verlander. I'd put him in the same conversation in all of baseball with Scherzer. I think that's how good this guy can be, and how good this guy is. The other big move was, of course, the fact that the Astros are getting hit with the scandal. What can we expect from them? It's going to be rough. I think the Astros are going to struggle. I think the Yankees, like I said before, they have all of the cards set up, stacked in their favor. The Yankees got rid of the player who I thought was going to replace Derek Jeter. I thought Didi Gregorius was going to be the guy who was going to step in and replace the captain. I really did. I thought that he was going to be the type of dude that was going to be able to come in and make up the numbers that an old, retiring Jeter had. Granted, he still played amazing that final season, but let's be fair here, guys. The numbers weren't exactly the greatest. And I thought that Didi was going to step in and replace some of those numbers. And he did, for the most part. But the Yankees didn't win a World Series with Didi at short, so they let him go. What does that mean for the middle of the infield? Well, they got Gabriel Torres, who's going to have to hold down the middle of the infield, with second baseman DJ LeMahieu. LeMahieu has been the most impactful second baseman in the American League and finished fourth in MVP voting last year. If you haven't listened to the MVP conversation we had on Friday, go back and listen to it. It's up there for you guys. Last year, the Bronx Bombers got bit by the injury bug. We're going to do a little bit injury news in a second. They got bit by the injury bug last year. They got bit by the injury bug again this year with Stanton getting hurt, with Judge getting hurt, with Severino getting hurt. It's already beginning for the Yankees, and that's why I'm looking at some of these numbers for them. You're looking at the over-unders, and I'm not in love with them. They got a revamped rotation with Garrett Cole. Don't love their bullpen with Chapman. I think Chapman's still going to be a dude that in July and August, you're going to be saying to yourself, oh, is this really the guy we want for October? I think the Yankees are still a couple moves away, too, and that's what people forget, is that baseball is a long season. Okay, I know we do these previews very early in advance, but baseball's a long season, and I think the Yankees are going to be the type of team that's going to be making some moves at the trade deadline and much before that. They're going to have to find a closer. They're going to need to find a bullpen that works for him because Aaron Boone, the clock is ticking now. Aaron Judge is incredible. Stanton's incredible. LeMahieu is an MVP candidate. They've got a chock-full, talented roster. If this team doesn't win the World Series or at least play in the World Series next year, there's going to be a lot of questions going around the Bronx. All right, let's talk about the player to watch. There's a lot of good options. Aaron Judge is my favorite player in professional sports right now. Stanton, a guy who really can't stay on the field. We got to go with DJ LeMahieu, who is the 7th best MVP odds, and he might be the most valuable player on the Yankees outside of Garrett Cole. LeMahieu is the player who most reminds fans of the Yankees from the past, from every outlet. And I mean this, by every outlet. Every single outlet you talk to, New York Post, New York Daily, it's whoever you talk to, New York Times, talk to any of those guys, they're going to tell you the same thing, that LeMahieu is the glue that keeps the Yankees together. He's a great clubhouse guy. He's the type of guy that you want to be hosting. He's the type of guy you want holding down the middle of the infield. This is the dude that, at the end of the day, he's bringing home the bacon. He's the guy that he's hitting for power and hitting for average. And at second base, gentlemen, ladies, this is a position that you don't usually see, the numbers, the power numbers that LeMahieu's been able to put up. That's why I have him as the player to watch, and I have him as the most impactful Yankee this season outside of Garrett Cole because, again, Judge is hurt, Stanton's hurt, Severino's hurt. This is the injury bug I was talking about, guys. This is the injury report. If these guys can't stay on the field together, if these guys are in the same situation that some of these other incredible teams have been, you look at some of the teams throughout history. Look at some of the teams throughout history, guys, who have had incredible rosters that guys just couldn't stay on the field. Whether it be because of injuries or off-the-field issues, great teams that don't win the title, books have been written about them, movies have been made about them. This Yankee team, starting in 2016, going to now, guys, this is the type of team that I'm talking about. These are the type of problems I'm talking about. If Stanton can't stay on the field, I saw tweets, I saw Yankees fans angry on Twitter earlier that he's stealing money, that it's the moves that they made are a waste, that Derek Jeter actually ended up winning the trade. He's the owner and GM of the Marlins. He won the trade because he got rid of Stanton before all these injuries piled up. Look, I don't think he's stealing money. I think when he's on the field, he makes a big enough impact offensively and defensively that he's a former MVP. He's worth the money. He's worth the aggravation. Severino, on the other hand, is supposed to be the second guy. You lose your second guy this early in the season. I don't think he's going to play this season. I don't think we can see him in October. I don't think we're going to see him at all for the remainder of the season with the arm injury he had. You lose your second guy in March. Look, you don't win pennants in April and March, but you sure as hell can lose them. And if Severino doesn't play this season and nobody steps up and fills in that role of that second guy, I don't think the Yankees are going to be in a position hosting the Commissioner's Trophy. Now, the over-unders Vegas has them for is 101.5 games. I think the Yankees are going to be a 100-win team. The only other team that is a 100-win team by Vegas' standards is the LA Dodgers. I don't think the Yankees win 100 games. I think this is a 98-win team, and that's going to be very important when we talk about the next team on the list, the Tampa Bay Rays, who, if they are not the hottest and coldest team, they are easily the hottest and coldest team in the American League East, because one year they're making the playoffs, next year they're missing it entirely, the next year they're playing for an ALCS. What do we expect? So they've had 3 sub-500 seasons before the last 2 where they were able to secure 90 wins. The team had the second best record in the American League East last year, and that's a big thanks to Charles Morton, who had a 16-6 record with a 3.05 ERA. Tyler Glasswell and former Cy Young Blake Snell add to the solid rotation. So if you ask me today on March 2nd, what can we expect from the American League East when it comes to pitching rotations? I would say the Tampa Bay Rays have the best starting pitching rotation in the American League East. With the fear of the franchise being moved to Montreal kind of subsiding, I don't think many people are really too worried right now that the Rays are going to be the Expos for half the season. I think that kind of has that problem has kind of gone away. I think that problem has kind of gone away. Rays fans are weird because LA fans, California fans, Northwestern American, Pacific Northwest fans, they got a lot of things on their mind. You can go hiking. There's other sports going on at the same time baseball starts. There's other things that you can go do. You can go travel. You can go, there's a lot of things you can do. Tampa Bay is the opposite. I don't think there's a lot of stuff to do in Tampa Bay. Football season's over. Maybe you can go see an XFL game. But for the most part, there's not a whole lot of things to do in Tampa Bay besides sweat and watch baseball. Well, Tropicana Field's indoors, and that place never sells out. I've never seen a sellout crowd there, except maybe for the playoffs. But for the most part, you don't have a lot of fans going to Rays games. And that's no fault of the Rays. It's a fault of the ownership. That's a fault of the marketing department. But the team has always been very up and down. 500 team is fun to watch. And a lot of fans won't tell you that. A lot of fans will kind of poo-poo that. People in the media will poo-poo that. But let me tell you, a team that could win every single game, that's fun to watch. A team that could lose every single game, that's anxious to watch. And I tell you what, Sports fans are the type of people who like to be tortured. It's just weird. That's just who they are. Bandwagon fans, they don't like that. They like to be on the thing that they know for sure. But real sports fans that live and die with their team, they like a little bit of anxiety, like a little bit of torture, they like a little bit of relief when their team wins. They like the agony when their team loses. It brings them back to the well. Tampa Bay is that type of team that they're going to have a lot of ups this season. I can see a lot of games where they win 4-0. I can see a lot of games that are shutouts, complete games by that great starting rotation. But there's going to be a lot of games that they should win that they end up losing because of a subpar offense. And that brings us to the player to watch. You're looking at Austin Meadows, who is the projected leadoff hitter for the Rays. He's coming off a solid season last year, batting .291 with 89 RBIs and 33 home runs. Now, pay close attention, boys and girls. The 33 home runs and the 89 RBIs is a really good test to see who's getting on base. He's coming up and hitting in a lot of situations where there aren't runners on base. Now, what does that say about the Rays offense? That tells me, as just an average fan, somebody that's not going to watch a ton of Rays games unless they're playing on Sunday Night Baseball, unless they're playing the Yankees, I'm probably not going to be checking out a ton of Rays games. Makes me think that Meadows is coming up to the plate a lot of the time, either to lead off an inning or coming up with the 7, 8, 9 guys kind of struggling. So, Rays again. Weird offense. I'm not in love with it. Meadows has really good speed, and the bats has a solid bat. He's the type of player that can lead the Rays offense. Look, you look at the Rays as a team who has an 91.5 over-under. I'm picking the over on that one. I think that the Rays win more than 92 games. I think they're a team that's going to be knocking the 94, 95, which, let's go backwards. I said the Yankees are going to be a 98-win team. I think the Rays are going to be a 94-5-win team. What that means is that coming down to the end of the season, these games are going to matter. And that is really what I'm hoping for out of this division. That the Rays and Yankees can be in close competition the entire season, and we can get a pennant race or a divisional race in late August, early September. That the gears get turned up a little bit more, that the screws get tightened, that starting pitchers have to pitch a little bit longer, that bullpens need to be a little bit better, that this division gives us playoff games before playoff games really even start. That is what I look for in baseball. I like meaningful baseball at the end of the season. And I know that playoffs are great. I know that there's a lot of very good moments that come in the playoffs, but regular season baseball that matters, which is going to matter if the Rays continue to play the way that we think they're going to play and the Yankees kind of struggle with some of these injuries that I'm anticipating. I'd really like to see meaningful baseball towards the end of the season. Last team in the division, the Toronto Blue Jays, who have an over-under of 74.5, another subpar team in this division. The Blue Jays are still trying to figure everything out. Thankfully, Baltimore is awful, and they are going to be the bottom of the barrel. For casual fans, they'll forget how bad the Blue Jays are because you're going to look on the ESPN ticker. You're going to look at the MLB Tonight ticker at the bottom of the screen. You're going to see a lot of Orioles losses. Another thing that's going to help Toronto get a good image, I think, around the league, I think around sports, is Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who last year, for an average baseball fan who just likes to watch home runs, who just likes to see a guy who has Hall of Fame pedigree hit the ball really hard and run around the bases really fast, Vladimir is that guy. Vladdy Jr. is that guy. He hits the ball far. He runs the ball fast. I think he's going to have another season like that. I think he needs to figure some things out. He still hasn't figured out how to hit, I think, a breaking ball very well. I'm not really in love with some of the swings that he takes. He's kind of like his dad in that way, where he's swinging at some of the wild stuff. But then you look at the pitching help that they got. Dodger Hugh Jin-Ryu comes over, a guy that was about, I thought that he was the second best pitcher on that Dodgers staff going into the playoffs last year. Dave Roberts didn't. Dodgers end up losing. This is a young team that's going to continue to develop and figure things out on the fly. They're a year away from being a year away. Next year when we do this in the 2021 baseball preview, we're probably going to be talking about how the Red Sox bottomed out, how the Orioles are still a couple years away, and how the Blue Jays, the Rays, and the Yankees are all fighting for those 2 playoff spots. Because I don't see the AL East getting all 3 playoff spots. So let's talk about the Blue Jays over-under. The 74.5, I think, is a little bit too low. I think they're about a 77, 78 win team. So let's go over this one more time. The Orioles, under on the 56.5. Red Sox, under on the 88.5. Yankees, under on the 101.5. Over on the Rays at 91.5. Over on the Blue Jays at 74.5. So, I think I went slow enough for you guys. I think you can figure that out. Call your bookies, call your agents, call your girlfriends, call your wives. Tell them that you're putting some money on a little baseball. All right, Friday, we're talking about the American League Central Division. What can we expect out of the home run hitting Twins? They've lost a ton of games to the Yankees in the playoffs. Are they ever going to figure it out? Also, Cleveland Indians, are they the team that's going to be the dark horse, or will it be the Chicago White Sox? And is this the last we're going to see of Miguel Cabrera on the Tigers? All that and more coming up on Friday when we talk about the American League Central Division. If you haven't checked out some of our other podcast content out there, there's Film Friday. That comes out Friday. Tomorrow's Television Tuesday. We're going to be talking about a TV show that I'm watching. It's probably going to be Seinfeld. I've been watching a ton of Seinfeld lately. We'll probably break down some of those episodes, what I like and what I love out of Jerry Seinfeld and the best sitcom of the 1990s. Debate with me. Later this week, we're going to have Sam OJ come on the podcast, talk to us about the NFL Combine, also breaking down his mock draft for the AFC West. And if you haven't listened to it yet, I have the NBA shoot-around for the weekend. What did I see? What did I like? What did I love? Who did I not like this weekend in the NBA? All that and more. Thank you for listening to the content. Please continue to send it to all of your friends. I will talk to you guys tomorrow.